On to the next entrepreneurs in the den. We have two first-year computer science students. Their names are Dan and Kayatan, and they're going to pitch to you their startup, which is called Questioneer.
Hi, I'm Kayatan.
And I'm Dan.
And together, we founded Questioneer, a startup that will change the way that maths students revise forever.
We recently completed our Maths A-levels, and like thousands of other students, we encountered two main problems.
Firstly, the only real way to revise was using past papers, which was fine for the more common, simpler questions, but useless for the rarer, trickier ones, as there were far fewer of those to revise from.
Secondly, when revising, we got no feedback, meaning that we had to mark ourselves and got no...
And it's even worse for the current students, because they're studying for specifications that have only recently been released, so they only have 1 or 2 past papers to go from.
Questioneer solves these problems by codifying numerical exams, allowing us to generate an infinite number of practice questions.
So let's explain exactly how this works. When we receive a new past paper, we look at the questions and we turn them into computer code. The text stays roughly the same, but we embed the equations that make up the question in such a way that we can vary them. So, simply put, if we get a question that says, what is 4 plus 3, we can automatically make variations of it, like what is 2 plus 9, what is 3 plus 7, and so on. Now, of course, this is a very simple example, but the software we've developed can handle much more complex topics, including integration, differentiation, trigonometry, and more.
And the net result of this is that we can take a single question from a past paper and use it to generate a limitless amount of similar practice questions.
But it gets even more interesting. Because of the way that we store questions, we can provide worked solutions with every question and categorize questions by topics so students can search for what they want to revise. And as they do the questions, we can evaluate their progress and, using machine learning techniques, suggest topics and areas that would benefit them most.
What all of this means is that Questioneer provides the experience of a tutor at the cost of a textbook. Our closest competitors are websites like Exam Solutions, none of which provide guidance or generate questions.
What we're doing is creating a revision experience that is far better than past papers and textbooks. But do students really want this? Well, we surveyed some past and present A-level students, and over 80% of them said that they would find more revision questions useful, and over 90% said they would like to be able to see searchable questions. Furthermore, over half the students we surveyed said that they would be willing to pay for this service.
Our service is currently at a stage where we can generate questions, give marks, and give work solutions. We're currently working on adding more topics to our set, and would be more than happy to show a demonstration after our pitch.
Initially, we will target the UK GCSE and A-level maths market, which comprises of around 600,000 students annually. But mathematics is universal, and so our addressable market includes the over 325 million secondary education students globally.
Once our core maths offering has been developed, we will expand to other subjects, including science and engineering. Then we'll offer bespoke versions of our software to schools and universities, expanding our global addressable market to over 500 million students.
And why are we the best team to do this? Both myself and Dan are first-year computer science students at the university. I have experience in working on several software and machine learning-based projects in the past, and I have a good understanding of the education industry from my time as a personal tutor.
I have experience in successfully bringing software projects all the way through from the start to the finish. I'm particularly interested in developing intelligent algorithms, and I've previously run an online web hosting company.
Being students gives us 2 great advantages for investment. Firstly, we don't need to be paid salaries while we're studying. As Ruben said, this is the cheapest we will ever be. And secondly, as we are members of the university, we are embedded side by side with our target market.
Today, we're asking for £30,000 for 15% of our company.
£10,000 will be spent on developing the user interface of our application, as we know that our success will hinge on this. £5,000 will go towards server hosting and infrastructure costs, and the remaining £15,000 will be spent on marketing, primarily online, during our launch.
Together, let's change the way that students revise forever. So we've got a demonstration for you here. There's 2 copies of it. So this is what a student might experience. You can see this.
When they get it right, say that it's right, and we can generate the images as well, the diagrams, and so on procedurally, so they change over time.
So every time they load this, it will give them different questions, different formulae, different numbers. You can see here that it is identified where the students gone wrong in this question, giving them how the step-by-step.
We can actually identify that and say...
When the questions are put into the programme, it is given... we're working on this at the moment. It's experimental, but in theory we don't have to actually put
Okay, so I'm going to retract you guys back to the spot now for questions.
But we don't have to do it for every single
Hopefully
question.
that demo has given the Dragons a good sense of what the technology can do. So Chris, your daughter is second year, Bath? Bath, is it?
Actually, can I speak here? Oh, here we go. Well, I'm quite interested in this because my son actually is a maths teacher in Paris. So, and he's kind of into this kind of stuff. So I'll have to have a chat, talk to him. But so that was much. So first of all, well done for the pitch because it was good, and it was much. Having had a short kind of Reuben cryptic brief beforehand, I was, that you went, way over the expectations that I had for the thing. And it also struck me that you kind of present it as a revision tool, but it's almost like it's more. You can almost be a learning tool in as much as.
Yeah.
So all that's good, and I can see that these things can be very powerful. Got a microphone. Okay, but I guess the thing that I don't know is we're once again in the kind of like adoption, problem, which is how do you get the word out there? How do you get people starting to use it? And also, did you maybe I missed that, but did you talk about the monetization part of it? How do you propose to make money?
So the way we'll make money is Questioneer will be free to use for a handful of the simpler maths topics, but it'll cost between £15 to £20 to unlock the full feature set. And the idea that we're going for here is that it's like a personal tutor experience because it tells you where you've gone wrong, it does all this, but it's at the sort of cost of a textbook, essentially. And we do intend to obviously spend £15,000 on marketing, which will hopefully get us users, but we're also looking to go via schools. So we've spoken to a number of schools, and they all seem to be quite interested in running trials there. And obviously, hopefully, if students see that the software is working for them, they'll be interested in it.
One thing I'd like to pick up is you mentioned the whole learning experience. So one feature we are going to add is a student can say when their exam date is, and the system will suggest questions to them as they get closer and closer to the exam to enable them to get their best possible mark.
It's also not limited to just exam revision. As you said, the technology of having procedural questions can be applied to anything where information needs to be learned or particular steps need to be learned.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't think, has anybody else got it?
Sorry, yeah. Hi. I think it's really interesting, and I can see how you can apply it to maths, GCSE maths A-level questions. What about other subjects, and what about, have you thought about, for example, GMAT tests or other professional tests or qualifications?
So we've looked into not just the UK market in terms of examination. The first thing that we did is look at other sort of similar levels, so things like the SAT in the US, the Gaokao exam in China, and so on. But we found that the same thing can be applied, as I said, to most areas where facts need to be learned, certain steps need to be learned. So it's applicable, we found, to even some of our university modules. So there's definitely a wide range of applications, both in professional examination and sort of school examination.
Hi guys, good pitch. I like the idea. Self-learning. It's been a while since I've been at school, and I wasn't very good at maths then either. So for me, this would have been really useful. But how is it different just from a textbook and trawling through, revising how you've always revised? What's kind of the USP? Why would I use this?
So one thing that a textbook is a static bit of paper on a page. It doesn't change, it doesn't tell you how things work. So what our system does is every single time it will give you different questions. So when I did my A-levels and I was coming back to revise, I remembered the questions and they weren't really helping me learn. But because our system changes it, you get different questions every time. You don't get that same factor of remembering it. Also, as you saw on the demo, when you get it wrong, it tells you step by step how to answer the question with the particular question numbers there. A textbook doesn't do that.
Okay. Don't people use tutors because they need someone there that's driving them to actually revise, do extra work? Isn't it easy just to switch off from this and think, oh, I'll do it later. I've done 5-10 minutes. If you've paid for your tutor, you know you've got an hour and you're going to get the most out of that. How do you keep this sticky with people going the whole way through?
So obviously it depends on the particular person. What I've seen from my experience as a personal tutor is there's mainly two categories of students I see. The students who want tutoring, who go to their parents and say, I need a personal tutor, I want to be better at this. And the students whose parents have gone and said, you need a personal tutor, you need to be better at this. And that former category, we're very confident we can get because they will go out and they will seek their own revision resource. And if we just provide them with a resource that's better than what they had previously, they will go for it. The second category is a little bit harder to grasp. So what we're trying to do is to introduce sort of rewarding aspects of it. It keeps track of how many you're getting right. It keeps track of your improvement. So there's that sort of positive feedback saying, look, you're getting better, keep working at this. And we hope that that will sort of keep students persevering. There's also the fact, of course, that it's significantly cheaper than a personal tutor, which for similar services.
Yeah. Okay, I like that rewarding idea. Is there some way you think that you could gamify it as well? So you could have, as you say, I don't know, if you get a certain mark and you get a couple of quid off your next session, or there's some sort of league table, or I don't know. Is there some way of keeping that interest and gamifying it?
So gamification is something we've considered. We've looked at other platforms that have done this in the past. So there was a revision platform called Selflearning, which was used a lot by schools at GCSE level, where you could see all the other students in your school, you could see how much you were revising, so on and so forth, and this created this sort of competition. So it's certainly something we're considering. Obviously, when individual students are buying it, not part of their school system, then it would be more sort of targeted gamification. So rewards for if you improve this much, maybe discounts, maybe some sort of rewards, so on. And definitely looking at focusing on that improvement. So not looking at absolute grades necessarily, but just saying, are you getting better? Because ultimately that's what revision is for.
Yeah, okay, sorry, final question from me. So you guys are in your second year, did you say? First year, second year?
First years.
First years. Okay, so how will you balance the demands of your course with developing this idea?
So something that we've considered is, and we'll probably be doing, is taking alternating years out on our course. So we can take gap years from our course, essentially. We can just suspend for a while. And if we do this in an alternating way, it means somebody is always working full time. And this can be done. So researchably, stood here, as Ruben said, just last year, and they were all students in their first and second years, and now they have that $2 million valuation. So it can be done, and we're confident we can do it.
Also, if it came to it, we would be willing to drop out and work full-time on Questioneer.
You gotta love that the first cheers from the audience is when these guys say they want to drop out. In terms of your market research, and you said you spoke to a few people and you were quoting some percentages of people who'd liked it or not, how did you go about that market research, and how many people did you engage with, and what was the sort of more specific feedback?
So the way that we did the market research is we created a couple of surveys, one of which was for past A-level students, one of which was for current A-level students. We mainly focused on getting the current A-level students, so we contacted our old schools and a few local schools in order to do this, because we were aware that if we give it to past A-level students who maybe know us and so on, the results might be a bit biased. And the results, by and large, the feedback in general came back saying that they feel that the current revision resources are really quite good in terms of the really simple stuff, but there's always the topics that, so if there's a topic that a student doesn't really understand, they end up running out of good resources to practice it, and then they're just stuck. They can't really mark their own answers because they don't understand the topic. They can't really get any further questions because they've gone through the past papers, and at that point they're stuck. And what really resonated with the students is that we can sort of alleviate this problem. And in general, the consensus was more revision questions are useful. The ability to try the same topic again, but with different values, is useful. And as I said, over half of them were interested in paying for such a service.
One thing which was particularly noticeable in data is the government has introduced new A-level maths specifications in the last year, and there were very few revision resources for this, and our survey, a lot of students, I can't remember the percentage, I'm afraid, found that there was basically no revision materials that were relevant to their course.
That was a question I had, which is how often do the courses get revised completely? Because I would have thought that maths stay sort of quite similar over the years. And if the syllabus change is only on the margin and that past papers would still be valid. And I certainly, so I used to revise using past papers. I found that very helpful. If I scan a question that I see, oh, this one I know, I can skip to the more difficult one. So I'm just trying to see, do you think that, so for me, hearing this, for revision purposes, and not the learning purposes, but the natural users, as you say, is if the parents pay £20, £30 for the package and hope the child uses it, and maybe they do or maybe they don't. But ultimately, it's people or students who already use old papers. Do you have any stats on, in the UK, or how many students currently make use of the, I believe it's a free resource to look at past papers, is that right? Or
yeah, so past papers are free to look at, and from our survey, we saw essentially all the students are using past papers. It's above 90%. So past papers are the most common revision method. The reason that we think we're better, well, I'll answer both of your questions. So first of all, how often does it get revised? Obviously, maths should be fairly static. Maths is maths. But the maths that the government thinks is relevant and thinks is needed changes quite a lot, as the governments do. So it's a situation where those specifications get revised reasonably often. We're seeing now there's a need for more revision resources, but the people we've spoken to who are doing older specification, maybe doing different specifications, which still have past papers, are still interested in our product. So it doesn't just work for the people who are on the newer specification. And the other thing is, why is it better than past papers? Well, as you said, you scan through a past paper, say, okay, I can do that one, let's find the harder one. Again, this is problematic for specific topics, but also, as students do questions on our system, we can keep track of the difficulty of the questions within the topics, and we can aim the difficulty of the questions at the student. So aim it at a level where they're likely to get some of the marks, but not all of the marks, to maximize that improvement.
So what are your main expenses then?
So our main expenses are initially the marketing. Of course, we have to get people using the service, and we have to get people on the website. We're quite confident that by providing them some of the topics for free, they will see the advantages of it, and our conversion rate will be quite high. But that will be our biggest expense. Our next expense will be the infrastructure and the hosting. Of course, we're doing quite a lot of maths, and it's not extremely computationally expensive, but it's slightly above just running a simple website.
Google Cloud Platform also offers free credit for startups, which we've applied for, and this year we have $3,000 of free credit, which we believe is enough to get us through the first year, and that increases as the startup.
Yeah, so that particular thing ramps up to $20,000 in the second year and $100,000 in the third year. So in those first 3 years, our sort of hosting costs are going to be fairly minimal because we have that.
Just a couple of other questions from me. I really admire the commitment that you are prepared to put in. I think that's great. And I can't think of a better, pair of people to make maths questions than like super maths guys, right? But can I just check, what grade did you get at your A-level maths?
Well, we'll say an A in the A-level and an A in the AS further maths. I may or may not have done the full A-level of further maths, but I'll leave it at that.
I got an A star in maths, and I was 2 marks off an A star in further.
Okay. Not too.
Yeah,
If they'd had the app, yes.
If we had Questioneer, 2 stars.
So the other related question is that, as you build the business, what other skills do you think you need to bring on board to join the team?
So there are sort of 2 main areas that we think we'll need to bring on board. So the first one is an expert in user experience design. So we're both familiar with designing software, and we can design user experiences, but we feel that one of the most important things for getting that conversion rate up will be the experience and the journey of users when they first get onto the website and see that it works for them. So our first sort of hire would be somebody who is an expert in that user experience, because while we know how to do that, we feel that an expert would do it even better. And of course, we're planning to spend 10,000 of the investment on designing that UI, because we feel that it's going to be really important. The next one is obviously marketing. Bring on board a company or somebody who does marketing professionally would be very useful, because as we expand to those international markets, it's areas we're less familiar with, and at that point we would probably want some external advice.
So, guys, how far off is it, do you think? 3 months, 6 months?
So the demo you're seeing there, the technology for that exists and it works. In terms of the launch, we're targeting our launch for September, because it's going to be the start of the school year. We're essentially targeting that back to school frenzy, saying, look, it costs as much as a textbook, but it's much better, and sort of targeting our advertising then. In terms of when does it actually get to real users? Well, we've been talking with local schools. They're interested in running a trial, and we're hoping to start that within this term. So it'll be in the hands of actual users within the term, hopefully.
Okay.
I'm sensing some interest, I think. There's a little bit of interest. Anyone, what do you think? I mean, Questioneer, they're obviously super, super smart guys. They're highly committed, as we've now established.
Education's important.
Anyone interested in making a deal? Look at all those poker faces over there. There's a little nod going between Chris and Sonia there.
So my feeling is it's a very interesting area. Once again, there's this problem of getting adoption. I like the fact that your burn rate, the amount of money that you're going to require to spend to kind of move things forward is very low. And I would kind of encourage you to just kind of move forward slowly and investigate more and more. I think from what I know, and I'm not an expert, but moving into foreign kind of other countries is quite a tricky business, because it's not just a question of translating your questions, because the curriculum is totally different. The language is very, very specific. Even the symbols are different. I mean, there's all kinds of differences. So I think you might tend to, But having said that, you've probably got some big markets like the US that are probably quite similar. But I think that fundamentally, once again, I think to my mind, at this point, it would be good to see someone in the team who was perhaps a bit more commercial, I would say. And also, I think that you're not as far along, at least as I would like, and particularly, given that you're just your first years is feels a little bit young to me. But again, I loved the commitment thing was great. But I think I'm gonna pass on this. So thank you so much. I probably will. I might have a conversation with you afterwards, because, like I said, my son is kind of really into this kind of stuff. So.
Lots of thoughts going on. I can almost hear the cogs in the brains turning there. Come on.
Well, I'm kind of interested. I'm more than kind of interested. I think this thing should exist. I'm assuming it doesn't already, right? I haven't asked you the question, but you didn't talk about. You touched on some competitors, but I assume there's nobody that's actually producing automated questions at the moment.
All the competitors on the market are essentially past paper banks. There's nothing like this.
So I'm really interested, actually, and I think if you could prove that it works for maths A levels, and then create a model that you could really move into, you know, maths in US or China or India or somewhere, then I think it's potentially a huge. Personally, I would actually. I mean, I think I would steer clear of trying to sell it to schools because I think that would take years and you're never going to make very much money. I think if you can create a really fantastic freemium model and do it on a global scale, then I think there's potentially a really interesting business there.
Thank you.
So I'm interested, but I would only be interested if other Dragon colleagues would like to invest alongside me.
No pressure there.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. Someone with an 8-year-old daughter who's really struggling with maths. You know, I think there's lots of people that do struggle with maths, and I think this could be a real flyer. So we've got interface designers and lots of devs in our business, so I think we could help with that. We've got some office space as well, so you guys would be welcome anytime.
Yeah.
So I'm up for sharing an investment with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's think about this because I think you know the funding. So the funding you need is to build the front end effectively and start to do pay some tech costs, right, and start to do some marketing.
Yes.
So I think I'd be interested in putting 10,000 in, but I would require probably at least 10% of the company. But maybe my fellow dragons would be interested in the same kind of deal.
Sonia is yet to declare her hand. She's got the mic now.
I caught by the mic. So I'm intrigued, but I need to understand the product a bit better. And what I don't know is past papers, do they currently work online or is it all in PDFs?
They're all PDFs.
For example.
Students tend to print them off and fill them out on paper.
Because that's the way they sit the exams, is
Yes.
pen in paper, right? It's not online. Sorry, I'm a bit on the fence in that sense.
Well, now you're making me think twice now.
Maybe it's one
You're
that we can
making me think
discuss
twice.
afterwards, yeah.
Sonia,
because
shut up.
this-
Just stop talking.
No, but the system relies on users entering the information online, right? So you can give your comments and
Yes.
feedback. Okay, and how easy is that to do, to enter like a maths equation online?
So I'll show you again on the demo.
No, it's okay, don't worry,
Yeah.
but just,
Yeah.
it's doable, is it? I mean,
We've
it's-
got you probably saw it on the demo, we've got a keyboard interface with all the different math symbols that are required to input the maths.
So for students nowadays especially, they're quite familiar with online tools, things like the Desmos online graphing calculator, where essentially you can input whatever equation you want, and the way that it's done is with a intuitive keyboard that comes up, you tap the symbol you want, it enters it. So a lot of what we would obviously want to make sure is that it's easy to enter the answers into our system. But I think that's definitely doable, and the solution that we have, from what we've heard from students, it's what they're familiar with, and they can use it reasonably well. And obviously we will be working on improving that in the future, but we're confident that entering any sort of maths that will be found at GCSE and A level, we can do.
When I can sort of sniff a deal, I do let it go slightly over the timer that we've got down there, but I think we're going to have to start crystallising something.
Just one final question from me. Do you think tutors would embrace this or see it as competition and cannibalising their potential business?
See, this is interesting because I am a personal tutor, so it's. I think for tutors, it'll be a split camp. I think ultimately what we're doing is to some extent taking their business. What we're trying to do is disrupt the market here in such a way that you can use our service as opposed to some of the services of personal tutor and possibly the most common ones. The most common thing that I do as a personal tutor is revision. I go over things that the student should know, and we go over past paper questions, and I tell them where they went wrong. And in that regard, we are disrupting the market, and we are basically taking their market share.
Okay. All right. I'll put up half the money, so 15, but I would like 15% for that.
I'll do the remaining 5 then.
So I think the deal that's on the table, let's just make sure my maths is working. that one slipped out. Is we're talking all the money between you, but for a total of 30%, I think is what we're saying. Yeah, we do need one of those questions. This is what, do you want to, yeah, go on. You do your little turnaround thing and have a, remember it's a negotiation, 2 ways.
We'd like to accept if you move down to 25% between all 3 of you.
I love this tension, it's great.
I quite like the idea of us having almost a third between us. So,
Can you move at all?
No, I can't move at
No.
all. And I can't divide 25 by 3.
I think we've got an app for that.
Ah, good answer.
Andy? But if you 24, you can divide by 3. 24 divides by 3 really well.
Not as well as
18
30.
does as well,
Whose side
actually.
are you on? You're supposed to be on our side.
So you're saying the offer still stands at that level? There's a bit more turning around to do, I think.
And it's a yes.
Hooray! Well done.